and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to show you how to play with some alcohol inks, pearls, and mixatives on your Gelli plate. This video is going to go into kind of the lessons that I've learned from playing with alcohol inks. They're really fun. They get some really cool looks and effects on my prints, but there are some things that don't really work, and that's kind of what I wanted to go over in this video. You can see the supplies I use. I've been using some alcohol ink, isopropyl 91%. I've been using the blending solution. I do use a brayer. I've used the acrylic paint and some shimmer acrylic paint. For this first technique, I'm going to be using alcohol ink with alloy for the first layer, and then the second layer is going to be the shimmer acrylic paint to pull the print. I'm using my brayer to mix around the colors. This gets it really moving. My first base layer was the 91 isopropyl alcohol. So after I mixed the colors up a little bit, then I added the alloy, gilded, and I did drop in some blending solution on top to make sure that mixed really well. This is just pulling a texture from one of my embossed cardstock pieces. That gives a really nice design. At this point, you want to make sure your background is really dry before we put on the acrylic paint. But here I have some light blue shimmer acrylic paint. Make sure your layer is very thin for this pull part. If it's too thick, it's going to be blotchy and it will not have a really clean, nice print. So making sure that print is nice and adhered to the paper, you have to have a really thin layer on top. So this turned out really nice. It's got all the paint up and the all of the dried on alcohol inks came up with the acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is a stickier paint, so it pulls up that alcohol ink nicely. In this next technique, I wanted to layer acrylic over the alcohol ink. This is just going to be basically making a little bit of a design on the Gelli plate, and while the ink is still wet, this is acrylic, I'm taking that same print and I'm just going to add a little bit of acrylic detail on top. This is what it looks like, and it does add some subtle design because it's not very bold because I'd pulled up a lot of it from the stencil. Another option you can do that kind of adds the design on top of an alcohol inked background is you could pull the print through the alcohol inked background, and that gives just the impression onto your Gelli print. Here I'm just cleaning my plate, so I just put some acrylic shimmer paints to pull the print, and then that'll clear off my Gelli plate for my next print. I did decide to do a little bit of some texture, and then I decided to make this print a double-sided print because the colors did match pretty well. Oh, that looks pretty. That doesn't have alcohol ink on it, but it does have the acrylics and it matched the colors. Technique 4 is using alcohol pearls on black cardstock. I'm going to do 2 prints. The first one is going to be just the alcohol pearls on the black cardstock, and the second one is going to have the alcohol pearls with some white paint to pull the print on black cardstock. This is going to be just the alcohol ink on black cardstock. And this is, again, just all pearls, 3 different colors of pearls, pink, green, and blue, and some blending solution to get it to move. If you do the alcohol on these blending pearls, it doesn't move, so that's why I'm using the blending solution. So here I put down a stencil, and you can see the alcohol is actually leaking through to the other side. Then I'm left with this design. After that dried, I added the titanium white. And then this white is really on the black paint paper is really going to show very nicely. You'll see the entire image pull up. So this is taking a second print basically from what we had left over from this first print, but you can see how different it is. Okay, for this next technique, I am going to show you what doesn't work. This was something trial and error that I realized didn't work well for me. So here I'm applying a heavy-bodied acrylic paint, pulling a print through a stencil, and then on top of that, I'm putting my alcohol inks. And the reason this isn't going to work out so well is because alcohol inks are not very sticky. And I'm pulling it while the alcohol ink is still wet, but you can see most of it gets left behind. So this is just my example to you that alcohol is good to pull alcohol, but it may not pull all the acrylic paint off. Here I just put some white on the back of it and pulled the rest of that to clean my plate. So now I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try the acrylic paint for the base layer, and then this time I'm going to actually pull the print of the acrylic, so it'll be on my paper, and then I'm going to put alcohol ink on the Gelli plate and pull that through. So I'll show you what that looks like. Right now I'm just pulling the design. So this is that acrylic paint in the design, and it is dry. I had waited for it to dry, so I'm going to use this silver paint. So I've got the heavy-bodied acrylic in black. Now I'm using a silver acrylic, which is more of an clear looking paint. It doesn't, it's not as opaque as the black. So this will be my first layer. It'll actually end up being my bottom layer because it's layered onto my cardstock now. But it's just this really nice neutral black and white, black and gray kind of a design. It could be left like this just if you liked that look, but then I wanted to show you what you could do with the alcohol inks to add some color to this. So I'm just gonna add my color to the plate and blend them in a little bit so that they cover the surface, and that way I have good coverage and color. And I think I'm gonna add a little bit of texture in here too. I'll add some of this paper texture, crumpled paper. While the paint is still wet, the alcohol ink, I'm going to pull up my print. Now you can see that it's bleeding through to the other side, even with the acrylic layer in between. That is what alcohol ink will do. So one thing I've learned with alcohol ink is if you're pulling the alcohol ink while it's wet, it doesn't really make a good double-sided print option. So it is cool. The colors are really vibrant and really beautiful. So this is, I'm gonna do the same kind of a technique as the first technique, but this time I'm using different colors. I'm gonna use a couple of different textures on the plate. I'm gonna add some fiber look to this with my ribbon here. And then from my stash, I have a toilet paper roll that I'll use to make some circles into the Gelli print. Then I'm going to add this metallic gold paint and pull the print with this gold paint on top. And this technique is also my favorite technique because I'm able to make double-sided papers when I do this way with the alcohol ink. And the colors still come out really vibrant. So you can see the alcohol is actually the first layer and the acrylic is the last layer, but it still has this nice vibrancy. So that's just showing you two different ways that you can get a very similar look. One of them bleeds through to the back and one doesn't. So in conclusion here, we were able to just pull the details on this print just by putting it over the stencil. This is just pulling up the stencil. Here was the alcohol inked background where I used the shimmer paint on the back to pull up all of that beautiful, colorful background of alcohol inks, including the gold was able to pull up there. On this side, you can see it really shimmers with that shimmer metallic paint that I have. It's beautiful. This is the black alcohol pearls that I pulled through the stencil. Didn't fully fill in the background, but I think it's still beautiful. This one has the white paint on the back of that pearl. And then that one really shows nicely on the dark cardstock. Here's an example of what didn't work well for me, was putting the alcohol ink behind the acrylic to pull it. It didn't pull for me very well over here, although some of it did work. This is the example of putting the acrylic down first, then layering the alcohol inks on the Gelli plate after the print was already pulled up to add color. And then this was adding the acrylic or the alcohol ink to the plate, then the acrylic behind it with all those textures in between. So now you can see, oh, and this was, I ended up rolling out my brayer so many times with all these different colors, and it really looks so pretty. I'm keeping this as a Gelli print just by itself, and that's just, looks beautiful with the gold on there. So I hope you enjoyed all these different techniques to try if you're new to working on alcohol inks in your Gelli plate.